That's not what I want to see. Oh no. Hi, I don't know if I'm streaming. I can't. Give me a second. Sorry, I raced to get here. I was almost late. I literally just got everything set up, but I realized that I did not bring my keyboard. This is going to be interesting. I do have my Wacom remote, but I haven't used it in a while, so sorry, give me a sec. Let me see if I can get Twitch on here so I at least can see something, because I can't figure out how to, no. I don't remember how to get a keyboard up down here. Oh, goodness gracious. It's been one of those days, man. Pixologic. Oh, yeah. Well, at least it looks like I'm live. Alright, guys. Sorry. This has been a complete disaster. I'm trying to find my... Stop it. Stop. We don't need that speaker connected. Stop. Turn off. Alright, let's get Twitch back up here so I can at least see something. Oh my god, you're gonna make me watch it again?
So stressful. Yeah, we probably could have used a warm-up mission.
Okay. Alright, hold on. Let me see. I'm just not seeing this. I do apologize, guys. I can't find my... Normally this saves my Restream login, and I am not seeing it. And for some reason this machine refuses to save my friggin' passwords. It's starting to get old. And I can't figure out... Isn't there a place down here I can bring up a keyboard? Oh, there we go. Oh no, this is going to make us go through this again too. No, that's me. We want there we go. We want this. Now I can see if anyone's writing. All right. Oh, sorry. Jesus Christ. I know, I am a shit show. I went to Portland to buy some stones today, and I left at like 10 in the morning thinking I'd be back at 2, and I literally just got this set up like 3 seconds ago. So it's been a wee bit of a chaotic day. Let me find this login for Restream. Anyone out there have the login for Restream? Text it to me. I know it was right here. I don't understand why I can't see it. Hey, I know I feel like it. I'm trying to get for some reason it kicked my Restream password out. And now I cannot find it. Alright, hold on, maybe it's in here. Okay. I'm going to turn my monitor off for a second so you guys can't see me type this in. We need display capture. Okay. Sorry, that'll come right back on. Okay, there we go. Hey guys, sorry. I left my keyboard and I was running really late. So, my bad. That should come back up in just... Alright, here we go. Howdy ho! Uh-oh, where'd it go? Alright, there we go. There we go. Where's ZBrush? There it is. Hey! Okay. So, how we doing today, guys? Sorry. I was running really late and I got caught in traffic. So, type to me. I'm seeing that we are here, that we have everyone here. But if someone from Facebook, from Twitch, and yep, there we go. There's a YouTube. Just give me some input. Do we have sound and video? All right. Now, oh my God, I have no way of doing Control N. Can we do this? Control N. There we go. So we might be reverting to our digital keyboard. Awesome. All right. Anyone on Facebook? It says we have people on Facebook. If you don't see your little icon up there, someone give me some feedback so we know what we're doing. Oh, there we go. Yay, team. We're all here. Now I haven't used my control in so long. Okay. That's Alt. That's Control. That should be Shift. Control, Shift. Oh, this is going to be interesting. I don't remember how I programmed my remote because I haven't been using it because, well, we've been going in 2020 and blah, 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 blah. So, ay. All right. We're going to make a ring tonight. How's that sound? We'll go, oh my God, I don't have any keyboard shortcuts. Oh. Okay, well, there's Gizmo, right? That's not going to work. W, there we go. Oh boy. All right, ring master. Let's do a size. Size 8. Okay, you need volume. How's that? Is that better? Sound okay now? Is that good? Or should I turn it up more? I don't know what our time lag is. All right, Tim, tell me if that sounds okay. Append to current. Awesome. Now here you're going to see one of the main problems with, oh, that's right. Mark is like, come on. All right, so it brought it in the right size. All right, let's make this. We are going to, oh man, this is going to get old. Sorry, guys. I accidentally left my keyboard at home, I guess. Like I said, I went to buy gemstones earlier today, and I left the house at 10, and I thought I was going to be back around 1:32, and literally I got all this plugged in and ready to go, and I barely made it here on time, and I got stuck in Portland traffic, and oh boy, it was joyful. All right, let's make this 9. Resize subtool. Boop. I don't believe you. Okay. All right. Front. This is going to be so old. And of course my remote isn't set up. I have 2 remotes. I have one at home, and I don't know why the settings on this one are different, or I guess it doesn't matter what the remote is. I haven't done the settings on this new Wacom, so oh boy, this is going to be a thrilling evening. Let's duplicate this and let us experiment with the, oh god. My keyboard, there's incredulity that I don't have my keyboard. It's really quite disturbing. This is going to be an evening of watching Tomas lose his mind trying to do keyboards. All right, let's do this to begin with. So how are we doing this evening, fine and gentle folk? Well, now anyone who ever wanted to know what all the hotkeys are, here we go. All right. Let's do snake hook, turn BPR. No, I don't care about BPR. Mm-hmm. Please ask your question away, because this is going to be a disastrously weird evening, I'm afraid. So if you're trying to get its rotation, okay, so you can do true bypass symmetry with rotation. Hold on. So we want to do a bypass ring, let's say. We just take this down to 2. So I'm on the y-axis, so I'm going through the top and bottom. Radial symmetry 2. And here we'll just get snake hook, and now you have true radial bypass symmetry. And that's how you do bypass rings and stuff. Right? So that is radial symmetry count on 2. But here you can see I just did it on 3 because I was futzing around with it. Yeah. Okay, so let's undo. Boop. So up here we have symmetry, right? So instead of doing X, Y, or whatever, I chose Y because that's going through the center of the axis, right? And then radial count 2, make it radial symmetry. And then as you're grabbing it, you're creating that bypass, like a bypass ring, right? And so that's how you do mirrored symmetry, or counter mirrored symmetry. So bypass rings are actually really simple. Ta-da! We made a bypass ring. Okay, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. I say this every week, and it's very true every week. I'm here for you. So if you have questions about anything, ask away, and I will gladly answer anything you present or want to know. So the other kind of cool thing, now for those of you who watch me regularly, you'll notice that I'm doing something I rarely do, and that's starting off with a mesh. Normally I'll do this in quad, but I'm going to, since damn it, Jim. Since I'm going to make this sort of a web cage sort of thing, I'm going to start with a mesh so we can use Sculptress Pro and a little Z remesher, because I want this to kind of be organic and wily. So we're going to come in here. And now this is the other really cool thing. Why is that not masking? Because that's smooth. So if I know that I'm going to want like a mesh that's interweaving and I don't know how that mesh is actually going to weave, this is what I'll tend to do. I'll start here. I know, right? See, there it is already. And this way I can come in, get that stuff roughly where I want it. Let's grab Move Elastic and kind of pull it back and in. Actually, that could probably be Move Topological. That's probably low enough. Yeah. Well, let's undo that. Because this is low enough geometry, you can use Move Topological, so you'll only grab one of them at a time. And just get my base geo where I want. Inflate, get a little bit more meat in that thing. Oops. There we go. And then, for those of you just coming in, sorry, I left my keyboard, so I'm a little clunky tonight because I'm trying to remember how I have my Wacom remote set up. It's been a while since I've used it, so I tried to have it set up in the beta for 2020, but there are a couple buttons that just weren't working, and so instead of really working on it and trying to get it right, I just dumped that and moved on. But sadly, that's coming to poke me in the eye right now. So the nice thing about the Sculptress Pro and the snake hook and the masking, no. Well, now we know how to toggle displays. Just kind of mask off what you're looking for. No. Oh, Oh, this is going to get old. Okay. Move topological. Okay. And then we just there we go. And the easiest way to get this to join is to remesh by union. And now these are joined, so you can drop that, you come back in and smooth, and now it's a solid. You don't have to worry about that being separated. So that's a good way to quickly come up with some kind of organic lapping forms that that are easily dealt with. And now I'm going to come back in and sort of define some flat planes. We can turn Sculptris Pro off right now. Oh, you can, no, there's no interrupting my flow. My flow has been shot to stuff tonight. So feel free, ask away, whatever you would like. Because sadly, I left my keyboard at home. So I'm trying to use my Wacom remote, but I don't have everything programmed into it. So needless to say, this is going to be slightly arduous tonight. This is not going to be a let's go till 4 a.m. This is going to make me nuts. So please ask away. Sorry, I don't know what my lag is right now, so I didn't have time to hook it up to the big monitor, so I'm not seeing myself. ZBrush fan, are you asking your question? Anybody have any questions? Please ask away. So either export it as an STL or an OBJ, okay? And then you come into, let's go to a different subtool real quick. Because when you import in, it replaces, it's interesting, where's my star? That's weird. So I think I have an OBJ in here. Let's see. Come down here to import. Merge. Well, that's, you want to make this just a little bit. So if they're close, they'll actually turn merge on and then import. And do I have anything here? I've got to have something that's, I can't type. Okay, it's not going to let us do it that way. Oh, this doesn't have a Windows button. Okay. This isn't going to let me. Okay, here we go. Those are STLs. Where's that ZBrush data 2020 temp? Okay, I can't guarantee what this file is going to be. What the hell? That was ZBrush data, temp. All right, well, I don't have any answers for that. I thought we might have had something in there. Hold on, let's do this. Import Dropbox. Those are all STLs. STLs. You can see most people are sending me STLs. Yeah, it shouldn't open that. Okay. Well, if you have an OBJ, this is an OBJ. Frame. So you can bring an STL file in just through import. So that's an STL. And then you can bring an OBJ in. So through import, you can bring STLs and OBJs in. And that's how I'd bring them in, if that makes sense. If you're coming out of CAD, you should be able to make an OBJ or an STL. If it's, I can't imagine anything that's not producing either one of them. But if you're bringing in an OBJ, make sure to move the weld over a little, just so if the points are together and they didn't merge, it'll weld them together. And then make sure you push merge in. And then that way it'll bring it in as a solid model. A lot of times when you push that, it'll like your model will blow up. And then once you have the model in, just detect edges and Z remesh, and that'll bring, well, you'll see. So this is an STL, but I want a quad model to work on while I'm in here. Just push detect edges, and yeah, either way. This is it's retopologizing, I promise. Oh, wow. You know what? This might be a night that if any of you have models that you want me to look at, this might be an okay night for that, only because, like I said, we're yes, I use KeyShot for rendering. I don't have it loaded on this machine yet, though, so sadly I can't render here. So there you go. So now you've retopologized this, and what I would do is come back right before we do that, hold down Control, mark it, then retopologize it, then divide it. What are we at? Yeah. But I'd lower it down to like that, and then project history. And then you've retopologized, and with the project history, it'll come back. Hopefully we're not stalling out. Are we stalling? Come on, where are you? There you are. Boom, and there you go. And now you can see it's not a perfect projection because some of the and this is very low. But I would come in, ooh, that's masking. Just do a quick smooth over this. You can turn symmetry on. Nope, that is not smooth. Do a quick smooth after your retopology. Because normally when you just do a retopologize and then a reprojection, often you have distortion. So basically what we brought the mesh much closer to where we want it to be. I'm going to go to my higher res and now project history. And so now you'll get a much, bringing it out so it's all stretched, then you relax it by smoothing it, and then you reproject it your higher resolution, and you wind up getting a much better reprojection. How do I do the oxidized? There are a number of materials that are oxidized. Actually, if you YouTube Nacho Resco, and he has a pretty good little video on how to make a oxidized silver. It's a very nice material, and he shows you how to make it. And then I think there's another one out there. I used Nachos, and then there was a guy who did it procedurally a little differently. And there are 2 YouTube videos out there about how to make oxidized metal, but Nachos is easy to find. I can't remember who the other guy was. And here it comes. It's taking its time, but it should be oxidizing. Yeah, project history is nice because where just normal project is looking for the negative face of the surface that it's around. It's actually trying to project to that other shell. Project history is trying to reproject to a state. Right. It knew it was here before, so it's much easier to do this. And now the really cool thing about this is, we come in here and we're like, oh, well, this didn't project perfectly well. So I'm just going to smooth that out. And then all I have to do is come back to my history brush. And have to turn symmetry off. And then we can come back in and just go over where that didn't project well. All right, you can do it with the brush and kind of clean up those projections. Does that make sense? Hey, Lisa. Nacho Resco. Boop. Well, here you go. I guess he has a materials pack. Yeah. See, he has... Oh, it's gold. I haven't seen the pack. I've only seen him. But you can see that unfinished, slightly polished. These are nice. I haven't seen these. This is very nice. So he has a whole pack here. Where is it? I don't know where. I imagine he's selling it somewhere. This is just demoing it. Yeah. Come on. Yeah, oh, Gumroad. So, yeah, $6. You can't beat that. And trust me, it's worth just buying his as opposed to trying to build your own. I waste a lot of time. Let's put it this way. I will buy this now that I've seen it. So, but Nacho has some beautiful materials. He's a good material maker. He's a beautiful renderer. He does some really lovely renders. So, yeah, no, without a doubt, his work here, this is good stuff. Good stuff. I like these unfinished ones. These are very nice. So I would just buy Nachos. Yeah, sorry, it was streaming, or it's freezing because I set it to the my poor thing was thinking really hard. That's why. My poor computer. And see, what's really nice about with the history brush now is in projections you wind up with these weird artifacts. You can see like right here, that's not where it's supposed to be. You can see right here, this didn't quite get all the way out. Well, now with the history brush, you can come in and bring that all the way up. You can come in and knock those down. The thing to remember about this this history recall brush is that it is a projection tool. So, right, you can see what I just did here, right? And I'm doing this, but now look at the back side. Look, I've pulled all that back up because it's looking through. It's trying to project, so it's going to project in the line that you're brushing it. So you can see that when I did this the first time, I tried to get it straight on. I smoothed it a touch and then used the history brush. And even if, I think I have mine set on backface masking. But I tend to set it on back face masking, but even then you'll get some pull. So just remember that when you're using your history recall brush, that it is a projection tool, and you can wind up with wacky things like that right there. So you want to make sure that you're kind of doing it like straight on and recall, because even here you can start to get some distortion there. Right, so make sure you go sort of to the front, smooth, and then recall. And I like to smooth before I do my recall, just because once again it relaxes the mesh. And you can see, remember here, let's go back. You see, because of the original projection, I did this over here, and see how those pulled through. Right, when I did this, see how that's pulling into that, and that's pulling into that. Well, simple enough, just rotate a little, smooth, and then just try to project straight down on it, and you're going to wind up with much better projections. Does that make sense? And now you have a remesh, so you can see this is now a quad model instead of the mesh as you brought it in. And this also now gives us the ability to go down here and do some cleanup, some motion, and some of that low polygon modeling stuff that we want to do, and then come back up. And you have your smoothing and cleaning ability this way as well. We were talking about keyshot rendering, right? Not actual liver sulfuring. Did I miss that? I thought we were talking about keyshot. If we weren't, I use traditional liver sulfur. Actually, there's a Japanese company that makes some really awesome liver sulfur that my friend Shinya gave me, and I use that stuff sparingly because I don't know if how it's more concentrated or what, but it's a nice liver. Different liver Jesus. Oh, it's gonna be a night. Different liver of sulfurs behave differently. So there's some pastes and some things like that that are fun. You know, there's artificial coloring as well that's more like inks, but I tend to like liver of sulfur. I'm not a big fan of the blackenings, because the problem with blackening as opposed to liver of sulfur is that there's no because liver of sulfur is actually oxidizing your surface. Painting or dyeing or staining is just staining the surface. So the liver of sulfur is a little deeper, and so when you start to polish it out, you get much smoother transitions. So it's black, and then it's sort of gray, and then it goes to silver, where if it's just a stain, you know, it just goes to that point where it's polished off. There's no toning. But liver of sulfur has a shelf life, and depending on what people are doing, you know, their jewelry can go black at any time. I mean, you know, if say you work around, you know, eggs that eventually turn into sulfuring, you know, and you can re-oxidize the surface of the silver, and liver of sulfur lends itself to that a little bit more. So depending on the kind of jewelry you're making, that might be a problem, and that's why people do use the pigments instead of the liver sulfur. All right. Gold has very limited options. I mean, that's what makes gold wonderful, is that it doesn't tarnish and it doesn't do all that. So in that context, I'm still looking for a good gold pigment. Or I'm looking for, I don't know, I guess now we can call 9-karat gold gold. Like in America, I think it's only recently, like in the last few years, can you call 9-karat gold. And nice thing about 9-karat is that you can get it to tarnish. So I kind of like some of the low carat golds because you can do some cool stuff with them color wise. There were a handful of people. I remember a company that was making this purple gold that was pretty damn cool. They had a patent and stuff, and then I haven't seen it. I don't know. I think it's probably just toxic as hell to make or something. But it was like this crazy, like, electric purple color. It was pretty rad. Hey, Kevin, how's it going? I left my keyboard at home, so we're trying to do this with the Wacom remote, which I used to have all programmed, but this is a new version of ZBrush, and in beta it wasn't working quite so well, so I didn't do it, and I just kind of passed it off and wasn't thinking about it. So does it act like liver or sulfur? I mean, is it subtle, or is it more like that, just like black paint? I don't even know what Jax is. Because I would prefer to have some... My problem, I love gold, and I love the color of high carat golds. It's just trying to get it... most of my stuff is dependent on... I do a lot of surface texturing, and sadly, if you polish gold, you get no surface texture. It's so reflective, you just never notice it. It's not a big fan. Yeah, 10 karat will do, you can get a little, and often that little is enough to feel the texture of the part, And then, of course, you can go to the Japanese Shubo. I'm not going to be able to remember anything today. I get flustered when I run. I hate being late, so I get flustered. Shibur Jax Chemical dot. Oop. No, that even when I'm using the screen, I can't type. Oh, I've used Ultra Black. So, thank you. I'm like, Shuba. So there are, hold on, reactionary metals. .com. Oh, reactivemetals.com. There it is. So there's Mokame. Is it under Mokame? No. So there's Shibushi, and then there is No, this is all just Shibuya, and then so there's gold and silver. So the Japanese do two alloys, Shibuya and Shibuya is traditional copper with 515 or 25%, and then a fine silver, Shikudo, is the gold. So it's fine gold and copper. And both of these, they patina incredibly well. If you want beautiful colors, like they're those eggplant colors, you can't get them any other way. They're pretty darn sexy. Come on. Are you really not going to? Why isn't my little menu coming up? Oh, it's gonna be this way. Okay. Okay. So as I said, this probably isn't going to be an incredibly long night if I'm going to have to do it this way. And then, hold on. Shaku is awesome. I don't know why that's not right clicking. But you know, all of this traditional Japanese where you're getting these really fantastic colors, that's Shibuya and Shikudo, and those alloys give you like some of these purples and eggplant colors that you just can't get this any other way. It's absolutely incredible alloying stuff. You just get some stunning colors in your metals, you know. And but once again, you're dealing with copper, and that can make people's fingers black. Hey, how we doing? Yeah, send me some, Kevin. I'd like to see that. I would very much like to see that. Okay, so that's horribly ugly, but I think we might have gone there. Yeah, guys, if anyone has any models they'd like me to look at today, I think this might be a good day. Not a full-blown critique day, but without a keyboard, ZBrush is very difficult to use. Oh my God. You know what? Oh, one sec. You know what? I'm at an office place here. Let me do this. I bet I can find a keyboard in this place. I'm silly. New text. Boom. Give me a second, guys. I'm going to go find a keyboard. There's got to be, this is a co-op office space. Oh yeah, oil, it's so nice. Okay, I'll be right back. I'm going to dig around in some drawers and find me a keyboard. Well, that was worth a try. That was really frustrating. What's the world coming to? They're all laptops. No one has keyboards. Okay. Let's see. Trying to think of what we can do, because this is going to be just really clunky without a keyboard. I can go over pieces. Do we want to just talk about some pieces? Any of you guys have any pieces that you're interested in talking about, or would you like to send me some pieces that we can talk about? Have you had any questions about things? Oh, actually I can show you this. This is pretty good, actually. If no, we were talking about cutters, and if this is what I think it is, so please feel more than open to ask me any questions here. All right. Damn it. I do wish we had preview pictures in some of these things. I do. All right. Okay, cool. Now let's check this out. Oh my god, I can't even do that. Oh, this is going to be really annoying. Come on. I can't tell you how frustrating this is. I mean, I really thought I was going to be like a half hour late, but I sped incredibly. I ran by my house. I grabbed my my keyboard, but I took the power cables out, and when I did, the keyboard came out. So it must be sitting on the ground right next to my bag because it's not here, and that's really frustrating. Makes me want to scream just a little. Come on, you can do it. You can do it. All right. So I was asked recently. Here, let's there we go. Control N. We had been talking about how to make molds, and this was for oh, this was actually just a test mold. So these were just like little plugs, but I should have the good molds in here somewhere. So I have, these are bleed offs. That's the shape. We had the base backing, and then that's the top. So we cut keys in. So the keys are all done separately. Then you come in, you use those as cutters, and you have all these pieces, and then you can just change this center part out and just change what you're molding really quickly. No, this has been such a shit day. I can't believe it. I mean, of all the things to forget, your friggin' keyboard, that's no fun. This isn't the mold I was talking about, though. But these are the parts. So it's nice if you're going to be repeating molds to, like you make your plugs, this and that, and then you have these master parts. And I had a little system set up, but obviously this is not it. Oh, this is the collar. Yeah. Yeah, hold on. How do I use the molds? Well, we were using these for silicone, but it's the same. You can use them for milling bases for metal molds. That's what the one, not this one, but one that I was trying to find is actually for metal molds. And it's a really easy system of using it. 317, that's what that was. 17, let's go back. 218. No, I'll try to, let me see if I can find the mold, the sort of little mold process. Hello, hello. How we doing, Lil? I apologize to everyone. This is a little clusterfuck because I don't have a keyboard. I brilliantly, in my running late, forgot my keyboard. I know. Yes, I know. Oh, I know, Kevin. When things blow, like when my video card blew up last winter, well, about this time last year, I almost lost my mind because I was just like, oh my god, my computer's just dead, and I can't afford a new computer right now. That would be very, very horrifying. So I was very, very horrified. Yeah, okay, I think this is the one that I have set up in parts. So let's see what we have here. Yeah. That's a slot. Those are bleed tubes. Let's start from the other side. Maybe this will make more sense. Okay. Nope. There it is. So basically, this is a silicone implant. That's the foundation. That was my first attempt at bleeders. These are holes to cut for the bolts. You can see that that's where the bolts are going to go through. But once again, this isn't the... I have these where they're all set up, and it's a simple thing because it's like you hit it once and it had the whole system where it would just cut everything out. I don't know why these are not showing. it's going to be that kind of day, isn't it? Hey VX, how are you doing? I know it's very disappointing. I don't have my keyboard with me today, so needless to say, we're suffering very much for it. I don't know. So it's really funny they have these dice primitives now, because see, this is before, because I made a brush for these bleed things. No. I know the one for the alien is there, but we can't. That's too risque for this. Okay, here we go. Here it is. So this is the final mold, except these bleeders are or are not. Hold on. Oh. Whenever you do this, make sure that you put it in a folder. Oh, how do I push return? Oh, I guess I have to go my keyboard, return. Before you split things to parts and you don't know what they are, make sure to put it in a folder so it doesn't completely trash your model, because sometimes these have like a billion parts, and so it's easier because then you can just pull the 4 parts that are your good parts out and throw the rest away. Yeah. Okay, so these are bleeders. And so what I developed, is this it? Okay, that's part of it. That's the base. That's the other side. And these are cut, these were just cutters to make the mold lighter so we didn't use so much resin. I'm trying to find the actual, okay, here it is. Here we go. Boom, let's hide that, hide that. Get down here. All right. So this is the base for our implant mold. So we knew that we only had so much size, right? I can only print a certain size. So this is as large a print as I can use. And you'll see all of these things. And what they're doing is they're cutting. So this is my hardware, right? So I know that I need, I don't remember, in Europe they have like a size C bolt or an 8 bolt or an M8 or an M. So I don't remember exactly what size these were. But I knew that, so like here you see 8.2 millimeter holes. So we know that these are, my bolts were 8 mil. So we did 8.2 millimeter holes. So we had room to go in. And then you can see we needed a part where the bolt head, right? So the bolt head comes up in there, and that way you can twist it on, and the mold is holding the bolt still. So what you have to think of is negative space. So these are the holes that are being cut in my block, right? And then this is the little sliding hole, because we use a silicone injector, and then you need to press it in because as it heats it starts to expand. So this is like the little door that we slid on it. Now this is the size of the platform that I could make my implant on, okay? And this happens to be that implant, right? And so you can see you can take anything and just stuff it in here. And then you do the cutter and it's boom, 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 and it gives you, where is it? the one that's already been cut. Here, this one's been cut. So you can see that on this side we have, see where the bolt goes in, right? So as it comes through, we put a bolt in there, and then that way you just screw the nut in and it holds. So we're not, so you don't have to futz with it too much. Is this the other side? No. Split a 2 parts. Right, so boop. This was used as a cutter for these guys, so we would cut that out, and that's just a little bigger than the part, and that would cut out the airspace. So when we wind up with our final mold, you can see how it cut that out. In that way, as a solid, that's the wall thickness we needed, but we used less resin by having a plug. So we made the plug that was the wall thickness we wanted, and then you cut the implant out of that. Right? Does that make sense? And then what I discovered is this little slot is for a little steel disc, because we use these. These were separating nuts, because when the silicone binds in, right, you put silicone in it, you throw it in the oven, and it cooks for 3 hours. And so what we discovered is if you pull on one side, you just break. I mean, the high temp resins are cool, but they're really not meant to be torqued on. So what we did is we put, right, remember I said we had a bolt right here, and then the screw went in here, and then these never came off. But what you do is you tighten them, and that you could do 2 cranks and then 2 cranks on the other side, and 2 cranks and 2 cranks on the other side, and it separated the mold so it didn't blow to pieces, because Formlab's high temp is pretty brittle stuff. And so we made this system where come in, you just take your block, these are all the cutters for the block, and you just change this out. We made like 10 of them in 10 minutes, where normal body modification, silicone injections, you have to do it in metal molds. So these things cost a lot. Well, the high temp resins, we can do that and get 2 or 3 pulls out of it. And even if it breaks after that, it's still 1,000 times cheaper than having a metal mold cut for it. So it allows for custom body modification stuff. Good morning, Plasma. So this, I think that this is a good use for the Boolean stuff. I'm trying to find, sorry, none of these are my master. These are all ones that I was using. So you can see that this cutter, I just made this X shape because that grid is a nice grid for being able to keep some structure to it. So it, like if you twist it, like when that wall thickness gets thin, that sort of acts as a girder so it doesn't just break. Here, we'll go back to here. You can see the backside here, right? And these acted as support, so we don't just have this 2 millimeter thing, and when you pull it off, it'll shatter. Because what we were doing, there's a lot of torsion on these molds, and so this was just the general pattern. And then these cutters were, I know that I have bolts that are going through these, so I can't have it running through there. I needed a support thing where I could put a temperature pinhole there. And so now when this is all cut and gone, you can see that this has that. It left these areas clear. And we eventually changed it where it cut out a little more, right? But what's nice about this is that once you have those base cutters sorted out, all you do is change your thing, do your first cut, boom, 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 it all cuts it at once. And this is a 1 Boolean tool. It's crazy. It's awesome. Yeah, so here is, transparency, boop. You can see the silicone part in here. Let's do it the other way around. right, there's the silicone part, and then that's the wall thickness. And so we use this as an additive, right? So that's not cut out, so that's added, and then the silicone is cut out of this, and then that way you can see here that even where we didn't have the regular wall thickness, it retained. Come on. Is that really just, okay, it's just mass. But you can see here where we didn't have the wall thickness just in that base form. If you just make a quick wall thickness gauge, you just add it on, and then the cutters will cut and blend everything else, and so you don't worry about that, and it just becomes a really fast process for generating molds that you're going to use regularly. I wish I could show you the alien one because it has all this broken out of it, but yeah, we're not going to do that. Once again, anyone who's new or isn't here, please, if you have any questions, this is a great episode to ask questions because I don't have a keyboard. So sculpting is going to be very tough. So I am glad to be here, answer any questions I can. And yeah, but sadly, my keyboard has... Okay. How this mold is used? Well, we use these to create silicone implants. So let's go to the interwebs and we'll just do a let's see. So you see here these ribs, and where are some other... Yeah, here's another example. See how there's the shape under the skin? Yeah, here's some more. Come on. Really? Why? Yeah. For goodness gracious. Yeah, you can see right here. See those little ridges? See there are little subtle ones there. There's a scare. Like these little ribbings. So basically what they do is they cut right here. They separate the skin and they shove these silicone implants up into them. So how we're using them is we're creating implants like this. Now the thing is why you don't have very many variations on what these are is because sadly they have to make metal molds for all these, where if we're making them in the Formlabs high temp resin, it actually, we can make one of a kind implants where the mold cost us, let's say, $400 as opposed to $8,000 to make a metal mold, right? And so how we're using these is that we're using them for silicone implants. What you got there? Oh, very nice. I like it. Yeah, you can't beat the colors, honestly. It's impressive stuff. So, no, you go away. Stop that. So since we were going to do a bunch of molds, see, all of these are already pre-cut. I have this divided out where all these parts, I showed you where it was pretty close in the last one. But if, okay, this is as close as I have right now, I think. So you have a base block, and then all of this stuff acts as cutters on that block, right? And so these are all just very simple parts that then you take your block, you take whatever your model is, set it in the center of that part, and then you cut it, and now you have a mold. These forms are very simple. They're done in ZModeler. They're very, very low geometry. All right, here, let me see if I can get the parts I need out of one of these, and I'll show you exactly what we're doing. So we need this one. We need this one, this one, this one. Oh, let me hide this stuff. Right, so we need the cutter. That we do need that frame. Is this the frame? Okay. And this should just be the base frame, right? Okay. So this is, I know that this is as large a block I can use, okay? Here, sorry, let's get rid of some of this stuff. This might or might not work. I don't know if I'm missing anything. I don't think I am. So I established for the printer, this is my mold parameters. Does that make sense? So this is the base block shape. Now why these are cut out is because, once again, why these are cut out is I'm trying to save resin. And when you're printing something that's 5 inches and almost completely solid, each one of these little things is it's a big saving of resin weight, okay? So we have this. This form is a plug in the top here, okay? You can see how it's cutting that out. That is the plug that, because we're using a wax injector, we needed it to be able to be closed, because in the oven it expands. So that's why this is here. If you're not using heat, then you might just need this. And as you can see, I have these like little steps on this. And what those steps are the different sizes of nipples that this wax injector had. So I just went ahead and made it where the 5 different size nipples could fit in. So if someone else is using the mold, that's why this is stepping there. So the wax injector or the silicone injection gun has these stems on them like this, and what it does is it takes part A and part B and it spins them together as it goes down the nozzle. So I was just saying, well, I don't know who's going to be injecting this, so I made the nozzle where the 5 different or 4 different sizes would fit in. So this is my nozzle going into the mold, or going into the part. So I have the cover base part, I have this base part. These are the cutters for all of the bolts, okay? So once again, these are bolts that go through it and pinch it together. And then these are bolts that are used for separators. So you can see that the nut stays in the part, and the bolt, these you don't unscrew completely. So that's the hole for the bolt and a place for the nut to set. And since I don't want any shock happening in my mold, we had these little, they're just like 10 millimeters steel discs. And so I cut a slot in where you can push the disc in, and then it drops down in here. So now that little plate, when I'm using it to separate my mold, here, right? So these are here, and then the nut stays on it, right? So these stay in the mold, and then that way to separate it, you just crank this down and it presses against that, and that's how I'm using it to separate the mold. So these stay in the mold. But if I need to move these around, you can see that I can slide these around. Let's say the part comes down and goes up in here some. We can change this and move it around pretty easily, because if we got, let's say, a Formlabs XL, I can easily take this, change the shape, and then just duplicate these and slide it up and get in the thing. So what I have is my base block part, and then this is my build platform within the mold, right? So I can, this is the comfortable size of whatever I'm making, and I know that this gives me my wall thicknesses, and it gives me a little step, right? So my part isn't just gushing out the side, because once again we were using silicone injector, which is pretty high pressure, so I needed those pieces, if they just set flat when it pressed in, even if it got a little bit of bow in there, you get all that flashing. So we did a step here to kind of eliminate the flashing. So this is the side, this is what we were, come on. This is the shape of the part, but here, let's just do this. Let's say you're doing a pendant, and okay, that's not on my XY axis. That's annoying. All right. And so let's say you're doing a pendant. This might be a little bit easier to understand as opposed to trying to figure out what I mean by implant. Whoa. I don't know why that acted so wacky, but all right, so you have this pendant, this very sexy pendant that so now we get it, and we have to kind of get it into that space that we know that we can work in. And then I just come over here. You can see that that's not touching there, so it's important that we have it go at least through the bottom, just so the mold will split right? And the implants aren't incredibly complex shapes, so this was built for something fairly simple. So we don't want to have any trapping there, right? So now we've got our sculpture sorted out. Now the only thing we need now are bleeders, right? So let's see, which side is this coming in on? Okay, so first of all, we need to turn this around. And move this back up. It's breaking the surface a little. That's what we need. Shift. Then I come into my brushes and I have these bleeder tubes here. Stop it. And I don't know if you'll remember what I said before, but if you have ghost on, you can't write on the surface. If you turn ghost off, you can. We're going to turn symmetry back on. And we are going to do this. Whoa. That's a little big. Come on, shift. Oh. And so let's try this again. Still too big. All right. Undo, turn symmetry on. Why is it? No, hold on. Turn symmetry on. We want it to be Z. Okay. And you don't touch it because we're just going to move it around in a second. Go to move topological. Stop. Once again, without a keyboard, this is a nightmare. You just bring these in. Make sure that everyone's kind of where it needs to be, right? Coming off the point. And so now those are your bleed tubes. Now what we do need to do is... No, it's not going to let me do that, is it? Control. Where's Alt? Of course, this keyboard doesn't have Alt on it. Okay, hold on. Let's see if we can do it this way. Control. There we go. Split hidden. All right, so now these. Sorry, without a keyboard, this is tricky, guys. All right, we are going to, let's just Dynamesh these so they're all just one thing and I don't have to deal with it. Remesh by Dynamesh. Oh, you have to turn symmetry off. Once again, sorry, this is so friggin' chaotic because I don't have a keyboard. Control W, there we go. So those are bleeders. And so with the bleeder brush, you just really quickly, you really, well, it's actually not that bad once you have the base part in, because you saw, we just grab that, you bring the bleeders tubes in. When you get this, you just make sure that that is touching, you know, that you have something here touching. So I'm going to change the design of our part real quick. So we have something going into the bleeder tube or into the injection tube, right? So you can sit here and just make sure that you're getting into your injection tube. So that's centered for the injection. We're like, okay, that's fine. It fits within the part. Now, these need to come up some. We have to break that surface or it doesn't work. Move topological. So this is where move topological is really helpful. Oh God, did it union? Okay, I don't care. Normally those are in my multiple versions of ZBrush. The curve setting's wrong on those now. So from my older version to this is a 3-year-old brush. They're not joining, but you'll get the idea. Let's go to these guys. What is that? Is there something there? Oh, goodness gracious. Somehow that wasn't joined. Okay. Oh, for God's sake. Let's hide this. Hide this. Control. It's incredible how absolutely difficult things can be without a keyboard. This is supposed to be so easy. All right. Shift. Split hidden. W. Remesh by union. And then accept. Now we're going to remesh by Dynamesh. No, there we go. Okay, and now those can be Control W. All right, so now is that split? Accept. we're yeah, the bleeders are so you don't get bubbles in the tips. And for the silicone, that's real important. We're going over molds, but I don't have a keyboard, so everything I do is actually very painful. Now, this, hold on, split hidden. What happened? What have I done? Oh, there it is. Okay. That needs to come up here. Merge down. Okay, it's for some reason. Oh, it's because they were different poly groups. Let's just remesh by union. Oh, symmetry's on. Remesh by union. Nope. See, when I split those, I unjoined them. Pain in the butt. Undo. Dynamesh is just going to close that hole, isn't it? Hold on, let's go back here. Okay, so let's hope that's one part. All right, so really, this takes a couple minutes. So you get your implant, you put it in a model, new folder. See, I even have to go over here to hit return. And then all these guys come in here. And this guy comes in here. So now these are all cutters, right? And it doesn't matter. This cuts last. And I'll show you why in a second. Right, since you have all those parts pre-made, we turn transparency off. And then let's see, this should Boolean folder. And because all those parts are not meshes, they're just simple Z model tools. All right, auto group. Did it cut it? Yeah, so there you go. And then new folder. Just because I don't trust how clean this Boolean is. Split the groups. You see what I mean? See how we do have these like weird floating parts. Sometimes you can have hundreds and thousands of those. So that's why I say send it to a folder before you split the parts. And now you can see that it cut the bleeder in. You can see I pushed it below the surface. That's bad policy, by the way. And then the other side has the rust in, and you can see the bleeder. I didn't get that one on the surface. But you can see how once you have your mold set up and your cutter set up, all you do is change this, draw your bleeders, and make sure your injection point is solid, and you can whip out molds like that. It's just simple things like hitting Control Shift and tapping a surface so I can see my groups. I can't do that right now. So does that make sense? Oh, these were this system was designed for silicone body modification silicone implants, but it can be used for anything that's two-part. That's why I was like, oh, let's make our pendant, you know. But does that make sense? I know at least I can hit return, right? Okay. So with the whole cutter system, and this is why I like the Boolean, you spend your time and energy, you know, spend a couple days and make sure that all your parts work and you have this mold base, or like with the body modification stuff, you know, you have those, the cutters for hinges, joints. Like let's say you're doing a lot of lockets, but you want your the outside to be weird. Well, all you do is you run a hole, you run hinges, and then you run the inside opening of what you want it cut out, and then you can attach any shape to it, hit boom, and now it'll cut the hinge, it'll cut everything. So I'm a big fan of using these to develop cutters. Well, there is no drainage hole. These little bleeders are just so a little bit of air can work its way out and through here so you don't get little air bubbles on the ends of this. For most jewelry, you don't need bleeder holes. Silicone's thick and it's very viscous, so it doesn't fill well. So you wind up with holes. But most jewelry wax, if you're using injection molding, you're not making bleeder tubes for those. Very rarely. Kevin, do you ever make bleed tubes for molds? I don't know that I've seen bleeding tubes being used for castable wax. I mean, if there's one place that's obviously trouble, sure, I don't see why you can't, but I very rarely see it because the wax injectors are really good about it. You don't, unless you just have a crappy model and you aren't thinking about it, I don't know that I've ever seen like big filling problems. I mean, most of your filling problems are going to be like fat to thin, to fat to thin, to fat to thin, as opposed to, oh, well, the air has no place to escape. Because the wax injector, somehow it works its way back out the top when you're injecting. So I don't know if the pressure's just so strong. But if you do have a place that you're constantly running into air trapping, then that's when you would use a bleeder tube. No. Okay. Let me see if... Well, and I mean, so that's... Oh. That's on my computer at home. I don't think I have it here. No. No, you're making... These aren't rubber molds. These are high temperature resin molds. So that's... like I said, the silicone's just so viscous that it needs someplace to go. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't think that Tony's molds have bleeding vents or places for bleed over. I could be wrong, but we have a Riachi wax injector, and so that is really a great wax injector. We don't really have a lot of issues. Yeah, of course. Yeah. No problem. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask me. I apologize, I'm kind of handicapped this evening. I do not have a keyboard, so my sculpting capacity has been diminished greatly. It's funny how a keyboard makes such a difference. It's incredible. It is very difficult to sculpt without a keyboard. Okay. Yeah, no. Not even gonna try that. Not working. Well, that's where, well, crap. Yeah, the molds will lock up on you. And that's where this part of the mold becomes very important. Right here. This hole and this little thing right here become really important because what they do, once again, let's go to here. So what happens is you just get, you know, that resin trap. So one, especially if you're doing urethane resins, make sure you have no undercuts. Big deal. But when you make your mold, here, let's make this see-through here. Let's erase this. Right, so these are the 4 bolts that are holding this together. Now, if you're doing urethane, why aren't you using a silicone base? Like I would make a frame like this and then pour a silicone and have the silicone key in here, and then you can just peel that out. You can, but if you're doing a hard mold, these little holes right here are a big deal. Hold on, let's go to ZBrush and go to the other side. Let's do that. And now let's go back over here. So what happens is we have the nut sitting in here, right? And then it's threaded, and you have the bolt that comes out and goes through and sits out on the other side, right? So on the other side, you know, you have this that's part of the right, you have your bolt, and then it's threaded here, and then the nut is sitting right here. So these don't leave the mold. And what is important about that is, where's my visibility thing here? Is when you have your mold, instead of trying to pry it apart, you just have these nuts that are, or these bolts that are sticking out. And then you just do it like you're tightening a tire. You give that one 3 cranks, and then you give the one on the other side 3 cranks. The one mold we have has 8 of them because it's a really long mold. And it has these bolts or nut bolts that never leave the mold. And then you just sort of do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you just keep tightening them in that crisscross pattern. And what that does is it allows it to kind of work itself out, and eventually it'll just release. So if you're using rigid molds, having these separation screws is a big deal. It really, really, really helps you separate your model or your molds. But if you're doing hard molds, you want to make sure you have no undercuts, because that could be a huge problem that you're having. Let's do that, and then do, there we go. Well, metal molds, most metal molds, just that's threaded. And you just use your gun, zip, 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 and it'll separate. So most of your metal molds have those separation screws, especially if you're injecting silicone, because once again, the viscosity of that, it sticks really bad. So having that ability to separate your molds. But like if I were doing resin kits, now see, maybe I'm just a ding dong, but I would use like that, because in the film industry we use that. It's pretty rigid blue silicone, and then I would make a frame like this for it, where it's two parts and it bolts together, but just where the so let's say, that is, your part needs, let's say a 1/2 inch of thickness, right? So, this is your silicone. And that's your model. So if you're looking at the outside of your silicone, when you do it, just make it where it has like a, I'll hide that side. So it has like a ridge down the center of the back. Right, sort of shaped like an I-beam. And then make a hard mold where this just snaps into the hard mold, right? You have that out. And then that way you can separate your hard mold. And then if the silicone sticks, or you have some tough places, when you pull it apart, the silicone will pull out of the hard mold, and then you can work the soft silicone out and around the more difficult places. That's probably how I would do. That is silicone and then have a hard outer surface. Right. Do we have any other questions? Sorry, I'm not sculpting tonight, guys. Sculpting without a keyboard is nigh impossible. And I used to have most of my things on my Wacom remote, but since this is old, or this is new, I don't have this set up. Look what I got. RFID stickers. So I can read, write RFID. Or I guess this wouldn't be RFID, it's what? Near it's a different set of initials. There's RFID, which is long range, not a lot of information. And then there's near field. God. See, this is the problem. When I get flustered, my poor brain just doesn't work anymore. Tea. I'm excited because I guess finally iPhone made it where you can write your own near radio field in. Damn it. So does anyone have any questions? Anything I can do to help sort anything out right now? Because I'm probably not going to go super late today because it's absolutely worthless. I'm very frustrated. But I'm more than willing to answer questions until 3 a.m. if we can, But, yeah, this is completely underwhelming. Let's put it that way. Hmm. It's funny that it replaces the double dots with, let me see what we can do here. Hmm. All right, let's see what we have there. Is it like a duck head or a pterodon head? It looks like a little short pterodactyl head. Thank you, NFC, near field. That was close. I was getting there. So you're just using domes as your keys, I'm assuming? Oh, I see. Hmm. Yeah. Well, that could be a couple things. Can I zoom in on that? Yeah. What material? Is that silicone? Or is this hard? It looks like silicone tearing here. Yeah, honestly, what that's looking like to me is either did you pour that's resin, so it wasn't poured hot. It looks like you might need to spray a release on your mold because that looks like it just bound to it. There's a spray release that might be helpful because that looks like it's just binding. Because this is such a rough texture that when you pour it in, the pores, if those pores are in the silicone, that's like just 100 million little traps, and so that might be the issue. Oh, so it's hard. Yeah. I think that you might, because this has so much texture, I think either you're going to need a mold release because it just looks, I assume that was cold poured, right? How do I set up my external memory? Do you mean my external drives? I just plug them into a bus or a hub, and then I just save things to it. Those become the saving. Like even here, I have an external drive to save the quick saves because this thing doesn't have enough internal memory yet to be, I save huge files every 30 minutes. Yeah, I would look into a mold release for this. And then, like I said, you might want to do some pressure release screws. It just looks like that just blew out. I think you just have so much, especially if this is hard, it's not flexible. If that's just UV resin, I think that this surface is so bumpy, it's going to act like 100,000 undercuts. And it's just going to be, unless you can screw it, like corner to corner to corner to corner. So you're pulling it like this as opposed to torquing it. I think that might be your only hope on that. Because that's a real rough surface. And that becomes very trappy. Have you used the undercut? For the most part, I use G drives. I think G Computing or G, they're just G drives. They used to be made for Apples, but they have a really good bus structure. They're quick and they transfer pretty good. One day I'm going to shift to SSDs, but right now I can't afford 190 terabytes of SSD or 109 terabytes of SSD. It could be that, or honestly, it could be the surface is just very trappy. Did you run the undercut analysis on this? Or your draft angle analysis on this? Because it just looks like some of these ridges and stuff, there's just... Because if we go here and go to our sugar skull... Didn't I just open that up? Oh yeah. Well, try the undercut analysis, because hold on, we'll lower our res here just because I don't want to deal with and let's just go one direction with this. Boom. Right, we're just going to look at it this way. And mine's going to obviously have problems, but you'll see maybe in here where some of the textures become issues. Let's set this direction from draft. Oop. And you can see, just see right here, all of this. You know, it doesn't seem like that would be massive undercuts. But the second you start getting it where it's all over, that can provide a lot of trap friction, right? You know, normally, if your mold has any flexibility, that'll just pop right out. But if you have a rigid mold, this right here will kill you. You know, it might pull out 4 of these, but when you have it going up both sides, right, you can see how that then, it's not just trapping it in one direction where you could feasibly peel it out, but it's trapping it like a V. And so there's just, you know, and like I said, you know, that might be 0.02 of a millimeter, so it's not a big deal. But when you have a bunch of it, now you have a problem. So I would take that part and do this to it, you know, just from both directions to see where it is. And if you wind up with a bunch of just even really tiny stuff like this, enough of it, that mold's never coming out, you know, unless you have, unless you have the pull screws. And even then, all you're going to do is tear it off, right? So I would run your draft analysis on that model. And if you upload that to the Dropbox for critiques, we'll look at it later on and we can analyze it if you want. Yeah, silicone, you just wouldn't have that problem, I would bet. And especially if you have a shell, you know, you just pop the shell, will hold it solid, so you don't have to have a ton of silicone. And then with the shell too, it makes it easy to peel a lot of the undercuts out. So I'd consider using a silicone for something, especially in the resins. You're going to get a really nice, beautiful, you know, silicone is super tight as far as detail goes, and it'll pull out. You know, it's not a big deal. And the little tiny holes that are too small that'll tear off, they will tear out in the first casting or two, and then you never have to worry about it again. Yeah, I mean, I hope that was helpful. You know, it's hard to tell, but I would say that it's trapping like this is your real problem. That would be my guess anyway. Let's see. You can do it. Because, you know, even this guy who was set up to be pretty flat, if you just do it straight, you can see how, you know, there's just a lot of friction points in there, and it really doesn't take much for it to really become a trap. Let's do it this way. Right. And none of that would be a problem if it was silicone. But you can see how that builds up pretty quick as far as what's an undercut or not. And this is great. It really gives you, you know, it's a really nice, accurate assessment of those draft angles. If you're going to use this a lot, I really would pull it out and then fill object. And I also have poly groups from Polypaint, because this is Polypaint, but the easiest way that I found to sort this out is, well, you'd do it in halves, obviously. But here, let's do this. Just so from Polypaint, boop. And now what that's done is it's turned these into poly groups, right? Here, let's turn our lines off so we can, no, turn the lines off, leave our fill. So you can see that it made poly groups from the Polypaint. And now, is it going to, there we go. And so now I can come in here and we're just going to do the front of the face. Shift. Alt. Fine, I guess we have to do the whole thing, sorry. And now we do that. Nope. Flip it. And so now the easiest way to get rid of your undercuts, now that you have poly groups, are to come in no, stop. I want this. W. Why are you doing that? That's supposed to be Alt. Oh, you're making me crazy. There it is. Goodness gracious. And so now you just come back here and you drag this in, and what that does is it brings that undercut back and in a little. Right? Just enlarge a touch. And then you go remesh by union or just dynamesh it one way or the other. It depends on if you want to retain your geometry. But we're just going to dynamesh it because it's easy. Doop. Well, hold on. We need to get rid of the mask. Remesh by dynamesh. Boop. Right. And now you're going to see. Stop it. Control W. And this is why I prefer to do remesh by union, because sometimes you have to come back in. These were big overlaps, so you have to come back in and just fill those spaces a little. But you will see here. Maybe. Why is that? Is that just an ugly color? Okay, it's an ugly color. And then if you, from draft again, you can see how we eliminated a lot of that undercut. But like I said, you have to come in and just fill that up just a little bit. But that's the easiest way. We can go over that again when I actually have, why is that gray like that? Is that masked? Why is that red? White. Fill object. I don't know how we got it off-white. Oh, I know. Polygroups, damn it. Yes. As we can see. Hey, Paulo. Nah. How we doing? How we doing? Yeah. This is super, super helpful. All right, guys, are there any other questions? I might be wrapping this up because it's absolutely worthless if I can't use a keyboard. I'm sorry. I'll be happy to answer any questions if people have questions. But as you can see, this has been very traumatic. Oh my gosh. I can't believe I raced to get here and I forgot my keyboard. Gosh, it's so weird. I mean, I've done my 2 hours, right? How often do I go 2 hours? Almost never. So, anybody out there have any last minute questions? Because I don't think I'm being very effective at this point, not being able to sculpt. Bueller. I also don't know what my time lag is. How are we doing here? That was Kyle. He just noticed that I didn't have the login, but I found it. All right, kind and gentle folk. Anything? Anyone? Like I said, I'm more than happy to answer questions while we're here. I just don't know. What's my lag? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Oh God, so I have a hellish lag. That's why no one's noticing. Okay, well, I'm going to wait here for a second in case someone, my 60-second lag. Oh my God, it's still, holy hell, that's a monstrous lag. Next critique is the last Monday of the month. So I think it's like the 22nd or something like that. Is that the last Monday? But, you know, it being the holidays and stuff, I mean, I like to do them all on one day. Or no, it's, what is the last Monday? It is, yeah, the 30th. The 30th is the last Monday. We actually have 3 more Mondays this month. So the 30th will be the critique this month. Right? Yeah, 31st is New Year's Eve, so it's not like anyone's going to be out and about on the 30th. Well, you might be. What do I know? Okay. 30th will be critique day. You can upload to that Dropbox anytime. You know, it doesn't have to be the day of. Printer-wise, I use a Formlabs for all of my prototype printing. And then if we're doing production molds or production parts, I'll still use Solidscape for that production master part. But to be honest, you know, Formlabs is getting there. And, you know, supposedly they're coming out with a new castable here soon. It was supposed to be this quarter, I think. And it's a higher percentage of wax. So feasibly it will burn out better than other resins. So that's super helpful for people who don't know how to cure resins. We find that heat and vacuum works better than UV for castable resins. The problem with UV is that the UV is curing the outside before the heat can evaporate the trapped resin. James Benyon wrote a couple very good papers on it. He's been doing the research for like the last 7 years. It's been a thing that he's been really on top of. And basically for castable resins, basically what happens is, hold on. You know, laser, oh, it's white. I'm like, you know, the laser comes in and it's UV, right? And it cures, so it has overlaps, right? But what that means is you still get these really tiny micro bubbles of uncured resin. And I mean, you know, these are 1,000th of a micron or 100th of a micron. They're tiny, but at 25 microns a step, you know, how many steps do you have? How many laser passes do you have? That's how much wet resin you have. And the problem with that is that as this is curing, right, you have all this wet uncured resin in here. And then you come in with your UV instead of heat and vacuum, and it cures the outside surface before it has a chance to let all this stuff evaporate. And this is all resins. This is the problem with resins and why they don't burn out the same way as wax. Well, one, they're not wax, they're resin. And so what you have is all of this wet resin coming up. And hold on, this is your investment. And you have one that's superficially cured on the outside. And then when you burn it out, what happens is this resin boils off, and it's very aggressive to your plaster or your investment. So now your investment looks like this, and when you pour your wax in, you get all your crud. And that is the number one reason. Hold on. I think that should have been castable resin. Wow, I really just can't type. So let's find a crappy surface here. Come on. Really? That's not what we needed. Are you telling me no one is willing to show their resin failures? Yeah. Cheesy bastards. I love no one's going to do it. So with the, I'm trying to find a good example, and there really aren't any that I'm seeing here. Everyone's just all happy showing their good castings. I want to see your crapo castings. And of course, no one makes pictures you can zoom in on. Isn't that lovely? Here, look at my great work. It's this big, you can't tell. So the easy way to tell if it's resin burnout as opposed to a casting issue, a lot of the casting issues come into the model. So if your model has pits, right, going into the silver, but the resin issues are often, they look like orange peel, and it looks like it's broken away, but it's like it's added it to the model, right? So let's say this is all rough and mucky, but this is filled in. That's the difference in, so let's say this is your surface. Here, let's do it this way. You have a ring. And you have pits going in to the surface. Now that's a lot of problems, but that's not really resin aggressing the, it can be if that's fallout. This is a generality here. But if it looks like orange peel and it's actually adding to your model, what that is that the resin is boiling off and eating into the investment. And when you fill it in, it becomes an addition to the ring. Does that make sense? Well, it's not a bug. It's resin. I mean, all resins do this. What they're doing is that they're adding more wax to the resin so they burn out better. But you have to remember that resin is basically plastic, right? And so if you don't do the burnout correctly, that's why often it's a slow ramp. Either it's a slow ramp or an extremely fast ramp, depending on the resin. But a slow ramp allows it all to bubble off slowly, and then it burns out. And then some of them, it burns it out so fast it doesn't have time to aggress the surface. But what Benyon found out is that if you build a vacuum, heated vacuum, the heat and the vacuum pull the resin out and allow it to evaporate without aggressing on the surface. Where if you use UV first, you've put a skin on the outside of that surface, and then the resin burnout has no place to go. So curing resin models is something that is very important if you're not doing your own casting, so you don't have control of your burnout. Yeah, but I'm talking about vacuuming out the resin model. So you notice that like Formlab says don't UV cure their models. And that's because they have the burnout where it's allowing the resin to gas off, basically, right? So it's a lot better if you can let that resin gas off outside of the investment, right? You want that before you put it in the investment. And Benyon has done some really, I don't know why I didn't just do this. No, it's not. No, I don't have it on this computer. Hold on, let's see. Yeah, I think this is. Yeah, so here's actually a really good example. So you can see that he's written pretty concise papers about this. So this is a UV cured signet ring. And do you see what I mean? How it's like bubbling out, and then you do have insets, but you can tell that's where just something fell out of it, right? So this is a castable resin. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this is B9 resins. He was using a B9 when he did his testing, but this is for all, I don't care who you are, this is for all resins. So as you can see, it's very much aggressed on the outside, and you get this orange peeling, right? And then this is the other style of ring, and you can see here where, I don't know the orientation of the burnout, but this is towards the top and it's gassing out and it's aggressing the investment, right? So this still has liquid resin in it when you pour your investment and you're burning it out. And so that is the liquid resin aggressing the investment. And then this one is just heat, if I'm not mistaken. And you can see you have a little issue here and here. You get some little mess here. But this is dramatically cleaner, right? And you can see it's cleaner. You just have a little bit of burnout issue here. And now this is with heat and vacuum. And yeah, you're not getting any of that. And look how clean this is, right? So these are printing line. You get a little bit right there, but this is the difference between UVing first, right? This is UV'd first and then burned out. And you can see all this weird surface falling apart. It's just aggressing that investment compared to, yeah. So this is just UV cured. This is just heat cured. And this is low heat with vacuum. And so you can build a heated vacuum chamber pretty easily. I built one. And it winds up that curing your resins with heat and vacuum give you a much better product when you're sending it out with someone who doesn't have, well, even if you're doing it yourself, you can see that you're getting a much better product out of that. Hey. Is what going to be cast in silver? This? Oh, we're just talking about investment stuff. No, well, I mean, if you over polish the living hajibas out of it, yeah, of course it's going to get lost in polish. But, you know, you can polish things. And, I mean, you know, we set up William Henry's, like the polishing for William Henry, like my stuff at William Henry. They cut the sprue, they grind that, and everything else is mass finishing. A person doesn't touch it. So you can retain great detail with mass finishing. You have to tune the finishing to that. I think it came down now where the pieces sit in a tumbler for 24 hours, but it's just a really non-aggressive, you know, the media is very non-aggressive, so it doesn't remove a lot. It just does it over a long period of time. Well, yeah, you need a vacuum and a pump and a gauge. It's not that big a vacuum. I think it's 3 bar. You do need a good gauge, but I mean, you know, if this is what you're doing for your living, spending, you know, $400 on a vacuum chamber is no big deal. I mean, the difference between the two things. I mean, I built mine at home. I bought the gauge that he recommended, and then I bought one of those resin. One sec. One of these. It's for pot. Images. No, it's not that fancy. It's literally just the 5-gallon, like a 5-gallon pot with the, I can't remember what they call them for. Hold on, let's go to eBay. no, heat. Yeah. So I made mine out of, all right, so this is the, here you go. So I got one of these. And I just replaced the gauge, and I got a good vacuum. And boom. I mean, because you're not UVing it here. And actually, we got one that I built one out of plexi, 1/2-inch plexi tube, and put UV lights around the outside, vacuumed, heat, and then UV'd it all in the same thing. But I mean, like, you can get one of these as long as your gauge is good and you have a vacuum that can pull 3 bar. Because I think it was only 3 bar, if I'm not mistaken. I think that it was a Rio Grande tumbler. It's about this big. It's big. And it's a silicone media. They're pink cones. I don't remember what it was. It's I think it's a silicone or a hard media with just very, very, very little aggregate in it. Maybe like a pumice, a grit, grit. Yeah, no, I mean, seriously, it's just that with, a good gauge. And I even think I got the gauge on eBay for like $85, $90, something like that. But you do need accurate, And the thing is these this one doesn't have the heat on it. I had that other, get this, and you can get one of these, and that's a digital control, and that's a heating pad, and that'll heat the inside of that sucker up, but good. And look, I mean, these aren't that expensive. I think I have a dual pump. I'm actually looking, there's a company in China that makes vacuum heating chambers for some kind of chemistry thingy or whatever. And I think they have the ovens, and the vacuum was like $550. And I'm looking to see if we can get one spec'd out where I can buy like 20 of them, and then I can just sell them to my students and stuff. And so it's all preset. You don't have to think about it. You just type in and the nice thing about those is that they have digital thermometers, so that you can ramp up the temperature and ramp it down and things like that. And it can be really tuned in pretty tight. Hey, Raytheon, how we doing? I would try, without a doubt. I wish that I still had all the Super 8 movies I made. I had a big passion for tanks when I was a kid. So I built these incredible tank models and then would set them on fire and I'd paint them and like make little war movies with my tanks. I did a lot of stop motion and tanks and fire. Let me see if I can find. I think we're now heat hardening the stuff in the oven. I don't know if he does the pin tumble. So normally you do the pin tumble first with the steel pins, and that tool hardens the surface and gets a lot of the goop out. And then let me see. Tools and equipment. Casting. Polishing and finishing. don't know if it's in. These are good units, but we have one that's open. Yeah, it's more like this. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the unit. And so it has a soft tumbling media, and it sits in it for like 24 hours, if I remember right, 26 hours. And you just throw all the parts in there and let it sit overnight, and there you go. But I know that we went through all the different ones, and I think that I think we wound up with one of these, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the Form 3 distinctly has a nicer surface, without a doubt. It has a tighter laser, and because it's not on a wad of silicone now, it's on that sheet. So it used to have the bed used to have like an 1/8 inch of silicone in the bottom, and so it had to have a lot of force to pull the part off of that silicone. Where now it's a really thin sheet, like a sheet of film, and so it takes less pressure to pull it off, so it can have smaller, wider surfaces without winding up with pull off. And I found that I like the new beds better. I had a failed model, but that was my supporting. I was in a hurry. I get very, very few. I mean, like if I have a bed of like 25 parts, I might have one that fails. It depends on how quick I'm trying to do the setup. Because if I pay attention to what I'm doing, it's pretty easy not to have a lot of failures. But where I did have problems, especially the new purple castable on the old silicone beds, the purple's very viscous. So I had a lot of my failures with that was tearing chunks of the silicone out of the bed. So I like the new tanks. I like the new tanks a lot better. I've had a lot less of that tank failure. I had a lot of tank failure from the other ones, but I mean, they were pretty aggressive. I was pretty aggressive with them. I think that, I like the Formlabs for a number of reasons. And there are quite a few other printers out there that I'm sure, like I said, I love the Solus. It's just way too small a build platform for me. It's the same price as the Formlabs. I'm just like, getting 5" by 6". You can actually do bracelets and cuffs and things like that. And that's a big deal for me. I do bigger parts. And then someone was showing me a couple of the others. And I'm sure there are hundreds of very nice, printers. The B9, the new B9, they have this gray resin. It's like a pale gray resin. And the B9 in that pale gray is tight. It's a very tight resin. But, that's $10,000. Okay, I could buy 3 Form 3s for that. So I don't think that there's anything that is beating the quality so dramatically that I'd be willing to spend, an extra $4,000 or $5,000 on the printer. But what I love about Formlabs is that their resins and their resin technology is really tight, and they're spending a lot of time and energy on their resin technology. And really the only other people spending that kind of time and energy is like 3D systems, like the Projets and things like that. They have some very, very, very snazzy resins, but you're $250,000 to $500,000 for a printer, and then your resins are insanely expensive. But Boeing and people buy those. I just think that having the printer tied to MIT Materials Lab, I think you have a solid product there. And also, I think they've gone through their third round of funding now. They're an incredibly well-funded company, so they're not going to go anywhere. That's one of the problems with the smaller printer companies is they don't last a long time. Because sadly, when you have someone who has the kind of money that Forum Labs has, or B9 has, or SolidScape has, Envision Tech, they have such a huge control of the market that a lot of the smaller companies just disappear, and that's a problem. All right. So, for those of you who are just showing up, sadly, I didn't bring my keyboard with me. I was running late. I went to Portland to buy some stones, to buy some turquoise, and I literally got here and set up like a minute and a half before I was supposed to come on. And in that process, one, haven't eaten today, and two, I left my keyboard at home, so sculpting is nigh impossible. So I tried and it wasn't working. You'd be surprised. ZBrush is it's useless without a keyboard. The ceramic resin is cool, and actually they printed this piece, this green man, in the ceramic, and you know what? It looked pretty good. I don't know. It's still pretty. It's not like that Italian printer that prints ceramics, because that's printing ceramics that are like, space shuttle tiles. I mean, it's pretty tough stuff. From what I understand, the Formlab stuff shatters pretty bad, and the shrinkage ratios are super weird. And it does. What's nice about it is you put your model in, and it distorts the model to its shrinkage rates. But I mean, it's like 22% one way and 12% the other, so it's like a bizarre shrinkage rate. So it's really funny. The green man they didn't cure it, so that technically was still wet ceramic. I was actually very excited about it when I heard about it, and then I saw some of the stuff, and it's like, yeah, sure, if you want to make soft coral pieces, that's fine, but detail isn't something that it's going to do after the cooking, from what I understand. So I was a little less inclined and less excited about it. But yeah, I'd actually love to get some of the ceramic and give it a shot. But, you definitely need someone who has kilns and all of that. So I guess the learning curve is pretty steep on it. Or let me rephrase that. The success curve is pretty steep on it, is what I understand. No, and, I'll tell you what, I mean, I really want one of the extra larges or the XLs, the Form 3 XL, because what I tell everyone is that when you get a Formlabs printer, yeah, you're going to print your castable wax. But once you realize all the other resins they have, it becomes a shop printer. I mean, I print all kinds of crap. I print handles for things, and I print jigs for things, and I print toys for my friend's kid, and there are just so many different resins that do so many different things that you really you can print so much crap. You realize that you use the printer for a lot of other stuff, not just the jewelry. And so I found that the Formlabs printer really became more of a shop printer for me. I mean, I print door handles and doorknobs, and I print all kinds of goofy crap. So that I think it's just a much more versatile printer at the end of the day. And once again, like I said, it has good support, and I've never had a problem with the company. So, like I said, I think over the, what is it, 3.5, 4 years that I've had a Form 2, I can think of maybe 8 models, 10, 8 models that I've had failure rates on. With the new purple, I had to replace the tank more regularly because I wouldn't have failure rates on the print. The prints would stick to the tank, and that's just because the purple was really aggressive with the silicone tanks. Now with their new tank, that happens a lot less. I don't get many failures at all. If you know how to support and you understand what and how to go about supporting, I think that I don't think you have many failures at all. I can't. I mean, honestly, I have very, very, very low failure rates, and when I do fail, 99% of the time, like I said, either the bed fails on me, or I was in a hurry and I didn't go over. I didn't go over my supports clearly. Sometimes I try to get away with too few supports, and then once again, it's not really a print failure. It's that like I said, this really happened with the old silicone tank. I'd put too few supports on it, and so the suction of the silicone was more than what my supports were, so I would leave the part on the bed or in the tank, and that's just me trying to get away with way too few supports. That's the one thing I really like about the Solus support system, is that so it comes up and then it has like 4 heads that comes off each tip, and they're all really small, but instead of having one 1mm support, it'll do 4 1/10 millimeter supports, and then that provides enough support where it won't pull off. I really like Solus's support system. Yeah, anytime I hear the ceramic. Oh yeah. No, I heard that there's the failure curve on learning how to make the ceramics is very high from what I've been told. I would have tried it up to this point. It just seems like, 1, I got to buy the material. 2, if you don't seal up your machine really well, I guess that the ceramic sloshes really bad, so it was sloshing into the printers and running printers, and it eats beds, and I don't know. If I were really going to play with it, you need to make a ceramic printer and not blend it, and just really seal it up and make sure that it's not going to die on you. Yeah, ceramics had issues for sure. That I and that's the thing that I will say about Formlabs. For the most part, they've done some weirdo things, but for the most part, they're pretty straightforward about things. I think that where people have problems with Formlabs, they'd have problems with any printer, and that's not knowing how to support, not knowing how to arrange your prints, the angles, and just not knowing how to set up a print, I think, is 90% of the problems that most people have. They can be a little Aspergery sometimes, where they're just, they know that the technology's right, so they're not willing to listen until you hit them over the head with it a little. But all in all, I think they're they're making a killer product, and I really like the big printer. I really want one of the big format printers so I can actually print shoes and some of that stuff, hardware, lamps, because when I'm printing things 5x5x6, it's 36 hours to print something like that. And it's always stressful. You're just like, oh, don't fail. So I like the idea of the big printer. Excuse me. So, anybody have any questions? Wow, we've just sat and talked an hour. I don't think I've changed my screen for over an hour. This hasn't been very good. A very good ZBrush session. ZBrush, I'm very sorry. Oh my God, I don't know why they keep me streaming. I'm a mess. All right, does anyone have any other questions before I wrap this up? I can't sculpt because I didn't bring my keyboard, being the big dummy I am. Yeah, I will. I'll wait to see if there are any questions. Okay, I got one. I know that my lag is really long, so. Yep, I will come back for a tip for beginners. So, all right, guys, this is going to be the last round of questions, unless, of course, we have a lot more. Let me go get something to drink. I need to grab water and just drink something. So you all, I know that there's like a big time lag here. So time lag. I'll be right back. I'm going to get a drink, and then we'll do the last round of questions. Think what you want. Sorry, my throat was a little beat up of my hours of me cussing in traffic in Portland. Any tips for beginners? My number one tips for beginners is don't try to bite off more than you can chew at one time. Start off with just and learn one thing, like learn how to build models in ZModeler, and then use one brush. Don't open 100 brushes and try to figure out, or open 100 brushes and try to figure out what each one does. Don't try to use 100 brushes to accomplish a project. I don't know, like I get yelled at all the time. I mean, I don't know. Those of you who watch me know that I get heckled quite a bit because they're like, don't you use anything except clay tubes? And it's like, well, no, actually, I'm quite fond of clay tubes. Clay tubes works very well for how I think people need to sculpt. The other thing, and this is not just for beginners, I mean, this is for everyone. And it is, remember that we all make stuff that sucks. I mean, I make models that suck every day. And you have to keep sculpting through it. I mean, I hear so many people talk about, a sculptor's block or this or that. Well, if you just sit there and think about it, guess what? You're never going to get over it. I mean, just accept the fact that, we sculpt stuff that sucks. All right, it sucks. So keep sculpting. And then you might find like one little part of it that doesn't suck. Now, if you're on a paid job, you can't do that necessarily. But I mean, as you're learning, just work through it. And you know what? If it sucks so bad, throw it away and start something else. Just, make a folder of things I've thrown away. And then when you have, rhythm and form back, you can go back and, salvage whatever there is from it. But the key is to sculpt through your problems. The other thing I would suggest is, if you watch me stream, you'll see me do this all the time. And that is, I'll start to use a tool for a job. It's a tool that I use all the time for whatever that job is, right? And then it just isn't working. I know enough about my brushes that I'll just switch it and do it a different way. And the thing to understand is there are 100 ways to get around every single problem in ZBrush. That is absolutely fantastic and absolutely horrifying in a lot of ways, because a lot of people just get like information frozen because it's just like, oh my God, how do I do it? Because there's so many ways of doing it. And that's why I have developed a workflow. And, I get crabbed at a lot because people are like, well, why don't you use this? Why don't you use that? Well, I've been doing this. I've been using ZBrush 15 years. And it's like, you have to remember, most of these tools weren't in this when we first started. And so I developed a workflow that works. And now I start to incorporate new tools in. But honestly, I use a lot of new tools, but they're just slight alterations over how I work. Because once again, I'm not doing this for pictures, right? We have to have this come out of the computer. So there are certain, there are only a few ways of making models that are clean shells that cast. And, it's like, new cars, they all started to look like teardrops because, well, that is the best shape for a car, right? Aerodynamicy and fuel efficiency and blah, 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 blah. But you then lose style, and so technically there are things that are the best way to accomplish some of these things. And it's just practice and exercise, if you're a real beginner, my tips are to go to ZBrush, go to Pixologic, and they have the Pixologic education stuff. And that is an incredible resource of your basic skills. And then there's always Ask ZBrush. If you send any question in there, you have the best ZBrush minds in the world answering those questions for you. So it's a really good way of getting a question answered, as well as if you go to the Ask ZBrush little area on their YouTube, there's tons of answers to just people's questions, and often you can find your answer there. I would be very careful about using online tutorials. There are so many people using ZBrush now that there are a lot of idiots who don't know what they're doing, who know how to make videos. And you can learn some incredibly bad habits from some of these videos. That's why I'd always suggest going back to the ZBrush stuff and Ask ZBrush. Soon my jewelry stuff will be up, and I'd argue that, after 15 years, my system of developing and surfaces and parts for casting is pretty solid. It's what I do for a living. Like Shane and some of them, like for the character design stuff. There's some really tight, really good tutorials out there, but there are also a lot of people who really don't know what they're talking about. And I find it a big deal because a lot of my students, I have to untrain some of these habits. It's like, oh, edge looping. That's one of my favorites. Oh, everybody loads edges up because they're sharp. Well, yeah, that's fine. But until you start dividing and need to sculpt on those surfaces, now all of a sudden it's a nightmare because all your geometry's on the edges. And so, there's definitely a different technique for sculpting for film and video and games than there is for manufacturing. They're two completely different needs, your geometry needs. So be careful about whose tutorials you use. I think that's that. Sculpting a perfect nose could take. That's true. That's true. But I think I would rather see 100 mediocre noses than one perfect one. You know, the key is to sculpt. Get in there and sculpt, 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 sculpt. Other key for a beginner is sculpt from reference. Okay, so or copy, I guess is what I mean. And when you copy things, try to copy them exact. Because why that's important for beginners is that you then have something to judge against, right? Because if you're just coming up with stuff out of your mind, you can always justify crappy sculpture by going, oh, well, that's what I meant to do. No, it's not. It's a crappy sculpture. And so if you're copying something or using reference of something, well, I mean, you can lay a grid on it. You can see where it's off. It's very clear what's not right or, what's wrong. So that's another thing I'd strongly suggest if you're just learning is to go from reference. Yeah. Any advice for sculpting stylized flames? What kind? I mean, are you talking about Buddhist flames? Are you talking about like rockabilly car flames? Are you talking about stylized realistic flames like on the edge of a torch or something like that? Tell me what kind and I'll see what I can help you with. But really, honestly, I would say if you do like a Google search on ZBrush flame sculpture, find someone's style you like and try to copy it, because that's a technical skill. That's not stealing someone, and you're not trying to steal their intellectual property. At that point, you're trying to copy their technique. And I would say that's probably your best bet. Flame's tricky. How do you keep flames from looking like hair? And that's hard. Really, the paint job is how you do that. Well, hot ride flames are super easy because, once again, just do it in layers. If you ask me next week when I can sculpt and I can show you, okay? I'd be happy to show you. Because just think of it as flats, right? And you're going to have much more success with it than... let me see. Do I have the one with Fudo in it? Is that something we... Did I bring that model in? No. Hold on. Let's see. Here we go. Come on. No. Stop it. Oh my goodness gracious. What are you doing, Ding Dong? All right. What is going on? I don't know what I just told it to do. All right. Why is that so laggy? It's only 2 million. Hold on. There's no escape button. Does anyone know how to escape? Oh my God. Holy hell. That's ridiculous. I don't know. Yeah, it's tricky without a keyboard, let me tell you. I'm done. You're done. Go away. Go away. Let's try that again. Come on. Schloop. All right, let's see if we can do this without exploding it. All right. Turn to the side. Hold down Shift. All right, that worked. Now Control. Those are more Buddhist flames than hot rod flames, but does that give you an idea of how I would kind of start to go about them? Think about them in layers, right? And I would start by masking out a shape, flipping it and just pull it out a little, and then mask out the shape behind, draw out the shape with masking and pull that out a little, so you get forms that are going over and under one another. But to get it, this is this is less than a millimeter of depth, probably, maybe. So, what makes it read are the steps. So just think of them as steps. And then the hot rod flames have rounder bellies than this. So just give the belly some weight. But before you sculpt them round, do them flat, because you can see that some of these are convex and some of these are concave, and that really makes them stand off of one another. Yeah. So that's how I would think about them, sort of, flat steps. Keep them, good old Fudo. This model was, this isn't the production model, because I cleaned this up where Fudo has more detail than that, but I was decimating it or whatever. Is this decimated? Nope. That's why it's crap, because it's Dynameshed. Decimation, you won't get that crappy a mesh. Good old Fudo. Fudo's one of my favorites. I like me some Fudo. But it's real important to always think of it in steps. This is actually what's really kind of funny about this Fudo, is that if you look through the ring, he's looking at you. Right, so you're looking at him here. Frame. But when you look at him from the underneath his face, his eyeballs are looking at you. He's like, yeah, I see you. Things that give me pleasure. Having Fudo look at you. Yeah. Do you mean this one? I thought where did I put that? we go. Did it? Why is it not opening? Hello? Oh. Oh, I see. It's downloading from Dropbox. Okay. You can do it. You can do it. Come on. How big was that file? That big? Man, listen to it scream. It's like... I wonder if I happy click that like 1,000 times, and that's why it's all aggro. Come on. No. Yeah, it's because I happy clicked the living hajibas. Look, I only clicked it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. So we imported it 9 times. Is this what you mean? So this is an older version actually, because now I have it where there's no undercutting on the back side of this, where this is all cut back. And well, I mean, there are undercuts in the sense of these holes go through, but this could pull from one mold now because I want to make these in titanium. And so titanium's a little bit more persnickety about how it deals with its castability. So I changed the back side of this. Well, you can, right? You can make like sharp V tools. The problem is, you know, they're not going to read like bright cuts. So you'd have to go through and bright cut it anyway. So in that case, I would just put a guide V in and then come in and do an actual bright cut if you're looking for that specific thing. But you can, with the virtual displacement map, you can take the VDM form and turn them into brushes and they'll cut. So, or also the chisels, hold on. Where are chisel brushes? Here. So you can make like a VDM and then turn it into a chisel. Oh, I don't have a keyboard. Where are they? Chisel. And so, okay, well, these are, it's the wrong chisel brush. That's bodies. Yeah. So see how these are shaped, right? And then when I come in here, that that brush now has that shape, right? This one, see how it's a bump and a nipple? And you can see how that is the bump and the nipple, right? You can see how that's like a more tear shape. You have to adjust the roll distance and stuff on these. So I would look at making them in the chisel brush, and you could get a nice, clean, hard form. See what this, it has been doing this to me. Did anyone notice that? So I just went to undo and look. It got rid of steps where that, it's been doing that to me. I need to ask what that's about. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I love my throat's thrashed from me yelling in the car. Yeah, this one has been this one's been reworked quite a bit from the original because one, the first one was a little thin, so we had some failure problems around the eyes, so I had to make sure that these are touching, you know, just so you get good fill. This one I didn't like because the chin got too pointy and the eyes are actually sitting a little too low in the eye socket now. But there's a version after this one that actually is a much more solid model. And that's what I mean. It's like, that's the advice for beginners. That's the other thing, is that, you know, you really need to print it and see what works and see what doesn't, because I iterate the living hajibas out of these models. I mean, you know, this poor sugar skull over the last 14 years has stayed the same, but been, you know, changed dramatically as well. So, you know, now we can do stuff that really retain a lot more detail than we could before. So, you know, it's changed and has gotten tighter, and you know, like the forehead lotus is a little deeper now, and yeah, you know, I've tuned it to be a better piece. The one you saw. Well, thank you for following. Can I do a request? Not tonight. I don't have my keyboard, so I can't sculpt. Come next week, and yeah, I gladly do requests. I mean, really, this stream is much more about answering questions for you guys than it is me really getting a lot of sculpting done. So, but yeah, of course, we can go over anything you want. The one I saw had a center stone for... Oh, you mean... Hold on, you're talking about... You mean... Where is it? Was it in here? No, it was in little houses. No, I know the ring you're talking about. I've just been posting wildly recently, so I kept getting yelled at for not posting, so I've been trying to post. I just love Tomas the Tank. That's like one of my favorites. I mean, come on. That's hysterical. Where was it? Was it with Mermaid? No. That's funny. Weird. Don't know where it went. I love, we were talking about this guy. I don't know where this book, right? And the guy who I sent a letter in, and he sent me a thing, and it goes, well, in the book it says this was accredited, between 1980 and 1990, so it predates yours. I was like, what, do you want me to send you a picture that says made in 1975 and then I predate it? That's not how it worked. Look at that. And I was like, yeah, and it's amazing for a 30-year-old piece. There's not a scratch on that. That's pretty impressive. I love when I get kickback from them. It's just like, dude, are you serious? Do a little research. Just do a little research. This isn't rocket science. Oh, they frustrate me so much. And what sucks about that one is that is a French school of jewelry that's tied to Van Cleef and Arpels. And it's like, if they're supposed to have credibility, and it's just like, oh, well, hey, we're saying this, and so it must be true. And then other people look at it, and they're like, oh, well, look, this says that this was made 10 years before you. I'm like, the hell it was. Show me any evidence of that. Show me one picture, any evidence of that. Don't believe it. I will have to dig that ring up. I'm sorry. I thought there were pictures there, but obviously I was wrong. Well, yeah, I guess more than eye strain, what I get is focus pull, where like I'll, if I sit for, 10 to 18 hours working, I get up and like I can't focus far away. And so I guess that's literally eye strain. It doesn't hurt. It's just my capacity to go from, so my eye doctor gave me bifocals. And then that way when I'm looking down, I'm getting magnification. And it's not because I can't see it. It's that it keeps my eyes from focusing more. So it lets the distance between me focusing here and me focusing up there, if this is magnified, so it's a less of a jump, I guess. So working with magnification lenses could help that if you are getting eye strain. Yeah. Oh my God, it's so funny. I can't believe I've actually sat here for almost 2 hours just talking. We haven't sculpted anything. Yeah, so anyone have any questions that isn't me sculpting? This poor guy lost a lot of teeth, didn't he? I wonder if that's not what I wanted to do. Stop that. Now this will be interesting. Let's do this. Mirror and weld X. Oh, hold on. Undo that. Hit Control. Make this our history anchor. Mirror and weld X. Okay, hold on. Let's undo that. W. Oh. Q. I want to see if something will work. Append. Come on, get smaller. You can do it. You can do it. Get smaller. Alright. So that's center. So let's just make sure everybody's kind of center here. It is center, I believe. Yep. Yeah, bifocals help. Everyone's like, oh, you're old. Well, first of all, I am old, so nah. Two, being able to see is so super helpful. Come on, get past that. That's what we're looking for. And get smaller. Oh, that's not what we want to do. All right, better. All right. All right. Now control, so that's our history. Mirror and weld. Okay. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we had a tooth over here. So I wonder if it'll come back. Oh. Back face masking is really important if you're going to try to play that game. Right, so when we flip this, this side had a tooth in here, right? Oops. And using our history brush, let's move elastic and inflate. Let's. Nope, that's the wrong one. Wrong button, Tomas. so you can. Obviously these teeth are not in the right place, but you can like bring the eye patch back. Interesting. Well, that's good to know. Alrighty. Are there any more questions before I wrap this up? The 16th of June, 2015. What's that? Is that when I posted the first sugar skull? It's right around there. All right. Kind and gentle folk, are there any other questions before we before I wrap up? Because once again, sorry I can't sculpt, so that kind of eliminates quite a bit of information we have here. I know that if Kyle and them watch this, they're going to laugh at me horribly and just like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Of course. And like I said, come back next week. I will make sure to bring my my keyboard. So stupid. Well, you don't realize how hard it is to do this without a keyboard. It doesn't work at all. At all. Okay, unless there are any more questions, I think I'm going to wrap up. Because I don't know that I'm being productive. Well, I don't know that I'm being productive for you guys. I have no plan, so it doesn't bother me. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And to all of those people in Europe who are just waking up and want to yabber with me, sorry. Today was just a hellish day of frustration. I just want to pull my hair out. All right, kind and gentle folk, we'll call it a wrap. Like I said, join me next week. Thank you, Pixologic, for putting up with my absurdity and my complete lack of sculpting during my wonderful sculpting stream. Yeah. Thank you, Kyle and Kingsley and Stephanie and Jaime and Ulfer and Joseph and Solomon and Paul and everybody else at Pixologic. Thank all of you. Join my Instagram. I post things now. I keep getting yelled at, so I'm trying to post regularly. You can always ask questions there. I answer questions everywhere, so feel free to ask me anything anywhere, and I'll try to answer it. Yeah, we'll call it that. Have a great morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are, and no, not the beard. Uh-oh. Pull it out. It's coming. I know I look like a Pillsbury Doughboy without it. All right. I will see you guys next week. A little bit more prepared and in my brain. All right. Have a good one, guys. Ciao. Thanks for joining me.